This is an introduction to personal branding in like 10 minutes. Before we dive into anything, let's talk about why we are even doing this. If you're new to the channel, my boyfriend and I built this channel for a very specific reason. We both work in content creation all day, every day for other brands. It's our jobs, it's our lives, and we're doing it all the time. And we figured that we learn things best when we're trying to make content about it. In the age of AI, we both believe that personal branding, if not the most important, is at least one of the most important assets any person can own. As information, content, and even technical skills become easier to generate and replicate, trust and reputation and human connection become more valuable. AI can help anyone create a polished post, a representation, or generate a business idea, but it cannot automatically give you credibility. Your personal brand is what tells people why they should listen to you, why they should trust your judgment, and why they should choose your work or your product instead of someone else's. And it is a combination of your personal experiences, your values, your perspective, your relationships, and in general, your track record. So our mission here is simple. We're diving into the best courses and resources on this topic, and we're turning what we learn into these videos so we can all level up together. So let's get into it. The first thing that I learned is that whether we realize it or not, most of us are already building a personal brand. There are really two paths. On one path, you're posting random things, you're following trends, and you're experimenting with different topics, and you're hoping that something will eventually work. But because there's no clear direction, people might be seeing your content without ever understanding who you really are, what you do, or why they should keep following you. So you might be creating attention, but you're not necessarily creating an asset. The second path is what we call intentional branding. This is when you consciously decide what you want people to associate with your name, and you reinforce that association through your content, your work, and everything else that you do. Because branding, when you really simplify it down to its core, it really is just the consistent pairing of things. Over time, these associations become automatic. You choose the idea, the quality, or the expertise that you want to be known for, and then you consistently give people evidence that this association is true. And this matters because your brand will exist either way. If you don't define it, people will define it for you with the signals that you happen to be giving them. What made this idea click for me was that branding doesn't have to be this vague, almost mystical concept. It can be defined very simply. Branding is the intentional pairing of relevant things done consistently. Branding is the process, and brand is the result. It's the association that people eventually make in their minds when they hear your name. If you repeatedly give people useful ideas about personal finance, for example, they might eventually begin to associate you with financial clarity. If you consistently show how you solve difficult design problems, they might begin to associate you with creative problem solving. You're not telling people what you want to be known for, you're giving them repeated evidence until that association and connection becomes automatic in their minds. Once you understand branding this way, it becomes much more practical. Instead of asking, what should my brand feel like, you can ask, what do I want people to think of when they hear my name? And what am I doing to reinforce that? Your content, your projects, collaborations, opinions, and even opportunities that you accept are all part of that pairing. But the opposite is also true. Every decision can create an association that you never intended. For example, if you consistently collaborate with people that your audience doesn't trust, some of that distrust may start to transfer onto you. If your content jumps between unrelated topics with no clear thread, people may struggle to understand what you represent. So intentional branding is not just about choosing what you want to be associated with, it's also about protecting your name from what you don't want to be associated with. Once you know branding is about intentional association, it's time to figure out what you actually want to build towards. This is where the brand journey framework comes in. It helps you work backwards from what you want as your result and build it into a practical plan. There are 4 questions. First, what is my desired outcome? What do I actually want this brand to help me achieve? Second, what do I need to be known for in order for that outcome to happen? Third, what do I need to do to become known for those things? Because a brand is built through evidence, not just claims. And fourth, what do I need to learn in order to take those actions? That sequence takes you from a vague goal all the way back to all the things that you need to be learning and doing today. Instead of posting without direction, you can make sure that your content, your projects, and your collaborations are all moving you toward the same outcome and same goal. Once you know what you want to be known for, the next question is how to avoid sounding exactly like everyone else in your space. One useful way to think about positioning is to think about the gap. What are other people in your industry saying that you disagree with? What are they overlooking? Your difference might come from your knowledge, your personality, your philosophy, your personal experiences, or the way that you explain an idea. For example, a lot of creators focus almost entirely on views and virality. But views are controlled by an algorithm. A brand built on trust is much more durable because people will begin to search for you specifically, regardless of what the platform decides to promote. Another thing that can separate you from others is your story. Anyone can describe themselves as hardworking, creative, or resourceful, but those words mean very little without proof. The story behind the quality is what makes it believable. Instead of saying that you're hardworking, talk about the story of the time you kept going when quitting would have been easier. Instead of saying you're resourceful, explain what you built when you had almost nothing to work with. Your challenges, turning points, failures, and unusual experiences are difficult for anyone else to copy. And frankly, they're much more relatable than wins. And that's what makes them some of the most valuable material in your brand. You also have to remember that your audience is constantly evaluating you. They're wondering whether they can trust you, whether you know what you're talking about, or whether your advice is going to work for someone like them. Rather than waiting for those objections to appear in your comments, address them directly in your content. Explain where your knowledge comes from. Acknowledge the limits of your advice. Show evidence and answer questions that people are likely to have. And finally, don't let the desire to look credible turn you into a robot. People connect with people, not perfectly polished information machines. And that means sharing more than just your successes. Share your failures, your difficult moments, and the things that you learned the hard way. These things build more trust than constantly trying to present yourself as someone who has everything figured out. Your expertise might make people pay attention, but your humanity is often what makes them want to stay. Another useful framework that we found is the three-part brand story: the catalyst, the core truth, and the proof. The catalyst is why your brand exists. It's the problem that you want to solve, the change that you want to create, or it's the gap that you noticed that made you want to start in the first place. It doesn't have to be a big life-changing moment. It can simply be something that you noticed that other people miss. The core truth is the belief or perspective at the center of your brand. What do you believe that most people in your space may not? What do you see differently? This doesn't mean being controversial just for getting attention. It means having a conviction that can shape the way you create, teach, or work. And finally, there's the proof. This is where your actions support everything that you claim. Your content, projects, results, decisions, everything should consistently demonstrate that your core truth is not just something that you say. Because in the end, a brand is not built by you declaring who you are. It is built by giving people enough evidence for them to reach that conclusion on their own. You can even apply this framework to our channel. Our catalyst is that we wanted a space to be able to study the things and the topics that we were interested in and to learn by turning them into videos. Our core truth is that we believe in the age of AI, a personal brand is one of the most important assets any person can own. And we think that creating content should be based on more than just chasing views. And our proof will come from consistently applying what we learn, sharing the process honestly, and showing you the results along the way. One of the biggest mistakes that someone can make early on is trying to talk about everything at once. When your content covers too many unrelated subjects, it becomes difficult for people to understand why they should follow you or what they can rely on you for. Starting narrow helps you build a clear association and establish credibility in one specific topic. This doesn't mean that you have to stay in that box forever. Once people start to trust you for one specific thing, you can gradually start to expand into related topics. The key is to expand in layers, not leaps, so that the growth of your brand still feels natural. But being focused doesn't mean removing your personality. A useful guideline is the 80-20 rule. About 80% of your content should reinforce your main topic. The remaining 20% can be about your other interests, your hobbies, and your experiences. These additional parts of your life give people more reasons to connect with you beyond your expertise. Someone might first follow you because of the things that you're teaching, but they might decide to stay and become more invested in you because you share their taste in music or their favorite sport or an unusual obsession. This is also why content pillars should be treated more as guidelines rather than strict rules. They can help you stay consistent, but they shouldn't filter out everything that makes you human. If you're genuinely excited about something outside of your core topic, sharing it occasionally can make your content feel more natural and memorable. The goal is to stay clear enough for people to understand what you're known for, but also flexible enough for them to be able to get to know the person behind the brand. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to give it a thumbs up and subscribe to our channel. We will be making more videos about personal branding and making a playlist about it once we go along and learn more about it ourselves.